welcome to a special show, the OTT Club, showcasing the growth of OTT platforms in India. I'm Chaiti Narula and welcome to India Today TV. With digital video leading the consumption boom in the entertainment industry today, the past few years have seen an emergence of many new players who are enhancing user experience with technological and pricing innovations. They're also continuously experimenting with new and compelling content. Adding to this eclectic spread of programming is a recently launched fearless reality show, Lock Up, which is streaming on MX Player and Alt Balaji. To talk about at length about the show and the overall state of OTT in India, which is a very important topic, I am joined today by Karan Bedi, who is the CEO of MX Media, a startup that has emerged as one of the preferred choices amongst OTT consumers. Karan, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you today.
Thank you very much for having me. The pleasure is equally mine.
All right, so let's begin. So, I just want to come straight to Lock Up. It's one of the most talked about shows recently. And, who would have imagined this kind of a reality show, 24 hours? What do you think is the reason behind Lock Up's success and the entire ideation?
Yeah, so, it is something that's been very, very successful for us. And I think that it's been a couple of reasons. I think one is obviously, the concept of the show itself. I think that we decided to take captive reality to the next level because, the basis of captive reality till now had been, what would life be like if you were confined to your house, right? You were locked up in a house. But I think that's no longer a very novel concept because, frankly, we've all been captive in our house for the last 2 years, right? So it's no longer a, innovative thing that people don't know what it would feel like.
Yes.
So we decided to take it to the next level and say, what if you were captive in a jail? So not only are you not allowed to move from a place, but obviously the facilities and comforts available to you are very, very different from what it would be in a house. So I think that was the core thinking about why we came up with this idea. And the second really big thing I think that has been very successful about the show is that this is the first reality series that has been designed for the ground up for OTT. And the big difference between OTT and linear television is that there is inbuilt interactivity. So in this, we already have a bunch of features that we've rolled out. And over the next few weeks, as the show continues, we'll be rolling out a huge slate of interactive features that really allow users to be a part of the show.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's something that's pretty unique, and I think now with OTT being in the phase of growth that it's in, you will see that it goes much beyond simply having content being streamed to you, right? We can do so much. So I think those are a couple of things very well.
Absolutely, and also, Karan, it's a homegrown concept. It's a first reality show to be streamed 24/7 on both the platforms, MX Player and Alt Balaji. What was now the thought behind all of this? Also, what prompted you to foray into the reality show space as well? Because it's a very interesting space.
I think, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The first phase of OTT, from, I would say, 2015 to 2020 probably, was, about differentiating from TV. Right? It was about having content that was very different from because as research has shown, the number of TVs in India are actually very few. There are only 200 million TV sets in India.
Oh, really?
So there was a very large, there are only 200 million TV sets in India, of which I think 140 million or something, I'm not sure of the second number, which are cable and satellite. So while we say that, 4.5 members per family watch that TV set, the reality is that that's not true. There's very few shows or very few pieces of content where the entire family watches together. So realistically, the reach of TV was actually only about 300 to 400 million probably. OTT today is already at that number and going past that. We have more than 600 million 4G smartphones in India, and that number is growing, leaps and bounds every month. So I think what OTT in its first phase was, like I said, differentiating from TV. OTT in second phase, which is what I would say from 2021 to now, sort of halfway through the pandemic to now, is about, in my view, replacing TV for most audiences.
Oh yes,
So,
oh yes, and you know, it's really caused a bit of a revolution in the way we consume content as well, in the way content is produced as well. Now, to a very different question: why Kangana Ranaut? Of course, she's a very talented actor, and she has a huge fan following. She's also considered to be quite controversial with her views. Is that the reason why you thought she was the best fit for Lock Up?
look, I think, one of the other interesting facets of Lock Up is that it's not just about tasks, right? Typically, in most captive shows, what ends up happening is that the way you get ahead is performing certain kinds of tasks. But I think with Kangana, with Lock Up, one of the things that we are talking about is to get ahead is to be an honest and transparent person, right? So people are being asked about transparency in their lives, about their secrets effectively coming out. And I think she really liked the idea that of that transparency. So I think that was one of the conversations that we had with her, and she was very interested in it. So I think it was a really good fit across the show that we wanted to do, her as a host, us as a platform, and it all turned out very well.
And such lovely participants, like the kind of mix that you have is very interesting as well. Now, with the OTT boom and a surge in the number of players, you've got a lot of competition. You cannot deny that from other OTT platforms as well. Now, what do you believe is your USP that is setting you apart? Because there is, like in television, you saw that clutter coming in. Suddenly in OTT also, there is now many more platforms that are springing up.
I would say that when we launched, it was 3 years ago, I think that was already the case. We were already I don't know what number we were. We were probably, technically speaking, the 40th OTT to launch in India or something like that. Even today, I think even after we launched, there have been a few more launches that have come through the OTT in India. So I don't know how many players there are today, but I'm thinking probably 50, 60 at least. But if you look at that as to how many of those are at scale, it's actually probably more like 5 or 6. And within that, like I said, we launched almost to the day 3 years ago. We launched at the end of Feb 2019. By mid 2020, I would say probably May or June of 2020, we had already emerged as the #1 player.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of our content strategy. Like I said, we were very early to recognize that the content on television was not catering to the entire television audience. That is 900 million people on TV was, theoretical. It wasn't actually practical. It was about, like I said, probably 400, 300, 400.
And what you say makes sense, because TV is a lot about appointment viewing as well. Here, the ball game is slightly different, which also makes it very exciting for the consumer. Now, MX Media has grown tremendously. Mr. Bedi, in the past years, the brand has created digital entertainment unicorns like Max Takatak, you've got MX Player. Tell us about this ambitious growth journey and how do you see it panning ahead for the years to come?
So I think, like I said, we're just at the beginning of sort of phase 2 of OTT. I think there's going to be a sea change in the way consumers consume content and various entertainment options. And not just about long form streaming, right? We do lots of other things. We have a gaming service on the app. We have a music streaming service. I think you must have read recently in the news that we recently did a merger deal with our short video service. So I think there's a whole gamut of entertainment consumption options that are emerging. And I think what will happen is that as time goes by, users are becoming more and more wedded to particular brands or particular sort of platforms and getting more and more of their consumption out of that. So I think we are very well placed for that, right? We are one of the largest consumption platforms in India, whether it be for OTT, whether it be for one of our other products. So I think going forward, you see, I think at a structural level, you'll see like a lot of these platforms do more than just one kind of content. And from an OTT perspective, I think you're going to see a huge wave of innovation in the kind of content. Like Lock Up is just one example where long form, short form, live streaming, interactivity, gaming, all wrapped into one piece of
yes, absolutely. And you just recently mentioned the merger as well. I guess you were talking about MX Takatak with ShareChat and the business proposition. If you could elucidate in that regard for the future to come.
Yeah, I think, obviously there was a large merger deal. Like I said, it's a very exciting, outcome, and we are very excited about how that's going to play out for us and our shareholders as we've become shareholders in ShareChat as well. And we all thought, it was a great time to bring two of the biggest platforms together to create a big unassailable platform in that particular segment.
Right. And MX Player is also the second largest downloaded app after YouTube. I'm very curious to know how MX Player has grown to be the most downloaded OTT app in such a short span of time. And, you're competing with the likes of YouTube, which is huge.
Yeah, it's really grown well. And another interesting statistic about MX is that globally, it is one of the few apps to have crossed 1 billion downloads on the Google Play Store. In fact, I think if you don't count the pre-installed apps that come installed with Android, things like Gmail and things like that, and YouTube, by the way, it is one of maybe 15 or 16 apps that has crossed the 1 billion threshold on Google Play, and the only app out of India. So it is by far one of the largest distributed apps in the world. And obviously, India is our core market, so we've got a very large user base in India. And yes, I think the combination of content, our technology, like I said, we invest a lot of our time and money in ensuring that our technology is also top of the line. We use the least amount of data amongst all our peers to deliver a video to our users, which means we save data for them. We do a lot of work on the recommendation system so that it's not just about the big new shows, obviously, which we talk about quite often, but enable our users to go through our vast library and watch lots and lots of content, right? The other big thing about OTT versus TV is that anything that you haven't seen before is new content, right? It doesn't matter whether it was made yesterday or whether it was made 5 years ago.
True.
So the value of those libraries for OTT is very strong.
Yes. The CII-BCG report, Blockbuster Script of the New Decade, said that MX Player was at the forefront of creating regional content to best cater to the demands of its users. Now, what has been the focus when it comes to that kind of content? Because if you see the other OTT players, it's largely not as regional. It's got a much more wider appeal.
Yeah, so I think, look, if you look at the language consumption in India in general as a country, right? You've got Hindi being about probably 60%, give or take. I'm not entirely sure of the number, but somewhere in that range. And then you've got obviously, Telugu, Tamil, Marathi, etc., all of which are very large languages that are spoken and used as languages of cultural conversation. And I think that's something that's been pretty obvious to us for some time. So, for example, in Marathi, we've made a bunch of investments. All the biggest shows in Marathi have been at MX. In Tamil, we made a big investment in a show called Queen a couple of years ago that continues to be one of the largest shows in Tamil. It's probably the largest web show in Tamil in general across any platform. And we've got the sequel to that coming out this year. We've got another big project happening called Ponniyin Selvan with Soundarya Rajnikant in Tamil. So we believe that, look, these languages of what I call cultural conversations are very important. So as you continue down this road, we have to be able to give audiences content in the culture that they want, right? And that, I think, is reflective of the general split
and I
of
believe
languages.
Tamil and Telugu is also a huge market for you down south?
Yes, so MX at the scale we're at, we have 300 million monthly actives. At the scale we're at, we have pretty much, our distribution of users in terms of region, language, etc., is pretty much equivalent of what the national distribution is at this scale. So, yes, we've got lots of users in Telugu, lots of users in Tamil. We've got users in Marathi, like I said, is a big language for us, in Bengali, in Punjabi, in Bhojpuri. And, now, actually, even newer ones are emerging. You have, content in Haryanvi coming out. That's a big emerging one. Yep.
Very exciting. Now, with the recent back-to-back hits like Bhaukal 2, Campus Diaries, many others, you have set a benchmark for yourself. No one can deny that. How do you now plan to continue to live up to your audience's expectations? Because, being successful is very easy, but sustenance is something that is a big challenge, right?
Yeah, so in that sense, you can say we've set the bar for ourselves, and I think that's the way to do it, right? The targets that you should beat should be the ones you set yourself, and I think we've consistently done that as an organization. Yeah. And we're going to stick to the principles that brought us here, right? Which is focus on the consumer, understand what the consumer wants, and that happens through many things, right? Lots of data on the app itself, lots of research with talking to folks, and then invest in the quality of content. I mean, it's a pretty simple formula actually, and that applies across genres, right? Bhaukal is out and out action drama, Campus Diaries is college romance, Lock Up is reality. I mean, there's we want to work with, great content creators, and we want to give people content that they really want to watch. It's actually as simple as that. Obviously, very complicated in its implementation, but strategically quite simple.
Right. So, Karan, hold on to your thoughts right there. It's time now for a very short commercial break, viewers. But do join us on the other side, where we're going to be discussing the future of streaming and interactive play. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers, to our special show, the OTT Club, where we're discussing the power and growth of OTT platforms in India with the CEO of MX Media, Karan Bedi. Karan, according to a PwC report, India is currently the world's fastest growing OTT market, which means that the competition is fierce and requires each player to diversify content. How is introducing gaming to the platform added value for MX Player?
So you're right. India is a massive market for OTT and growing the fastest because, as I mentioned earlier, we have so much ground to cover, right, for entertainment to mass India. And the way we've approached it at MX is diversity in both in content and in experiences. And diversity of experiences is where gaming comes in, right? Gaming is a very, very engaging, lean-in experience that users love, right? So we have a casual gaming service. We've recently launched a social gaming service as well, where users not just play against the sort of phone or the computer, so to speak, but are able to actively interact with other folks playing games on in real life with each other, right, against real people. And we're extending that thing to gamifying our entire content experience. So imagine, you're watching a show on MX and there's a game related to that show. You can watch the show together, chat with each other, play a game against each other while watching the show or just after watching the show. So I think these lean-in experiences are really, really important. And today, MX has already emerged as one of the largest social gaming and sort of casual gaming platforms in India. And I think we're leaning further into it. And just with the same concept of how we introduce games, many, many new products are on the horizon, right, where we want users to spend more time engaging with our content, engaging with each other around our content.
So from what I'm understanding from you, interactive play seems to be the next frontier, not just for you, but for OTT platforms across the board?
I would say so. We've been in the sort of gaming space for quite a while now, over 2 years. And I think there's a lot of other international competitors that are now understanding the value of that and starting to get into it. But in general, I think that one of the big things about OTT and about digital interaction in general is that it's two-way, right? It's not just one way. It's not just about someone making a piece of content and someone else watching it. I give you again the example of Lock Up, where there are so many ways of users that can be part of the show. I mean, one very interesting thing we've done there is that we have like a frequent flyer program. So the more the user interacts with the show and the more the user watches the show, they can level up and become like gold and platinum members almost of that. And as they become higher tier members of the show, they get access to more and more influence in the show, right? To the extent that we are actually going to be allowing a contestant to actually even go to the jail at some point during the show based on how they interact. So I think that's the beauty of two-way interaction, right? It's not just about content, us making content. It's a very rewarding experience for a platform and for a content creator to understand how users are interacting with that content and be able to be part of that two-way interaction.
And are there any other ideas for the future growth pillars at MX Player, like sport, news, for example?
So I think all of MX Player is focused on youth, and I think it's a big emerging segment. I mean, like I said, take a show like Campus Diaries. It's about college romance. It's something that we are all very familiar with, and people are quite excited about. So I think, we are actively expanding in many, many audience categories and content categories that we think are exciting. And I think that, today we're at 300 million. We think we'll be 2 or 3 times that size in a few years. And that will come on the back of more time spent, more users, more content for users that want to watch stuff on us.
And what do you believe, personally, is the future of streaming in India?
I think that we're living it right now. I think the future of streaming is going to be masses of diversified content offerings. I think eventually what will happen is that each person is going to open up a streaming app, and that's going to be 100% tailored to what I want. It's not even about what anybody else wants. So I think MX will mean, MX will mean something different to me, something different to you, and something different to everyone else watching this show. So I think it's going to be a paradigm shift in how we think about content trends.
So before we wind up, you already have covered it, but I also want to understand slightly nuanced bit and an extension of the same question about the future in content and tech for MXM.
So I think tech is going to be the big enabler of this, right? So I do not see technology as an industry as such in the media sector. I think I see technology as basically now the very core of that industry, right? I don't think it's just about being technology enabled. Whole sector is going to become about technology, and technology is one of those things. There's a saying, I can't remember which of the fantasy writers said it, but technology at its best is indistinguishable from magic. So I think that we live in a world where software is able to basically create whatever we can dream up. So I think that it's going to be the driving force of how people consume entertainment. I think streaming is today sort of phase 1 of it. I think interactivity is phase 2 that we're already in, and who knows what phase 3, 4, 5, 6, phase 100 is going to look.
Oh, and I'm wishing you all the best for your journey, and big congratulations on becoming, of course, the biggest after YouTube, and also the new series Lock Up. OTT platforms definitely have a bright future chalked out for themselves, for they've just not given content creators a chance to experiment with diverse content, but have also, please remember, given viewers the chance to understand and even explore their own content palette. It's a wrap on the show. Thanks for watching.